we welcome you all to the second lecture of the day 4. So, ma'am, over to you whenever you are ready. We can perfectly see you
Okay,
and you
thank
are
you.
audible.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Solanto. Just opening the PowerPoint. All right, I'm trying to share the PowerPoint so that we can proceed to lecture 6. Okay, and
Yes, ma'am, it's visible. It's visible.
thank you. Thank you. And you can hear me, right? Properly.
Obviously, we can hear you.
Great. Thank you. So welcome back. Welcome back, everyone. This is lecture 6, devoted to Audre Lorde. Audre Lorde, destruction, deconstruction, and form. The question of form has come up, as you heard in lecture 5. It's been one of the issues for Lonze, the search for a different form of critical discourse. Critique means the search for a different form. Now, with Lorde, we'll take the opportunity to connect this search for form also to the gesture that seems to traverse the entire production of Lorde, and that is the gesture of dismantling. And we shall see how that kind of dismantling is different from destruction, and instead is a particular take on deconstruction. So hence the lineup of destruction, deconstruction, and form. There is a great awareness of destruction in Lorde, just as there was a great awareness of destruction in Lonzi. Let's spit on Hegel. It's, let's destroy something. Now, let me recap what we achieved in lecture 5. We talked of critical practice as part of a larger space of thought. With the help of Lonzi, we saw how she envisioned a critical thought that reflects a new, as she puts it, cosmic condition, but we translated planetary condition. So a critical thought related to a vaster world, driven by the necessity to dismantle, to take its distance from power, and be different from power. Now, in this, in lecture 6, the similarities between Lonzi and Lorde will emerge. They are both into destroying power relations. It's a kind of it's an intent to destroy power relations of power. The critical act, however, given this intent, the critical act, we shall see how the critical act expands from the artwork, to text. We shall see to text and to society, and we shall look at, of course, Lorde's idea of the text. We shall infer it. Me want to so. Critical. What do I want to accomplish? What would I like to accomplish? Just to give you a preview, I would like to project the notion of critical practice as part of a larger space of thought. I would like to dwell on the necessity to dismantle and the meaning of dismantle. I'd like to dwell on the critical act as it expands from text to society, and focusing especially on Lorde's idea of transformation. So there will be a tension between, destruction and creation. I think I'd like to begin with the role of language. The role of language. In the transformation of silence into speech and action, Lorde, like Adrian Rich, and like Arendt's Rachel before Rich, you will remember, stresses the key role of language. Allow me to read. Each of us is here now because in one way or another, we share a commitment to language, and to the power of language, and to the reclaiming of that language which has been made to work against us, In the transformation of silence into language and actions, it is vitally necessary for each one of us to establish or examine her function in that transformation and to recognize her role as vital within that transformation. We spoke of experience, the living thought, and that Lonzi hopes for, based on rooted in experience. Here we are hearing in Lorde's words something similar. The emphasis on the vitally necessary for each one of us. The emphasis on self-consciousness, experience, individual experience. So Lorde would not separate the question of speech from the problem of truth telling. This is the first point that I wish to emphasize. The question of speech, it cannot be separated from the question of truth telling. There is a commitment to language, just because, as in Adrian Rich, again, Women and Honor, the essay mentioned, feminism is about an ethical horizon. On top of the question of truth, Lorde poses the question of speech, ultimately within the context of a shift from logos to bios experience, from intellectual legacies considered in isolation. Okay, these are the two concepts for the question of truth, and therefore speech inseparable from truth telling. The ethical horizon, and then the second concern is the shift from logos to bios. The attention shifts from logos to bios, that is, from intellectual legacies considered in isolation to ideas steeped in experience, that is, forms of life, real forms of life, real experience. In this to Lorde, in these concerns, in being concerned about these points, Lorde displays a strong affinity with Rich, without considering the way in which both Rich and Lorde, for example, try to steep the problem of speech into lived experience, into forms of life. Thus, without considering the role of the body, we would miss the power of pieces like the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. We would miss the power of those essays like that, where truth telling and the risk of outsidedness fall on women of color. There is a specificity of experience, specific forms of life. Toward dismantle, let's move on to talking about the key role of destruction. It's different from, or it's bordering on deconstruction. Let's try to understand why these terms, first of all, come up in Lorde. Because Lorde, especially in the Master's Truth, if you read it carefully, speaks of projects a descent into chaos that is necessary for the critical thinker to emerge, when the critical thinker is a woman of color, especially. But the descent applies to all thinkers who, in terms of forms of life, bear the legacy of minorities, bear, therefore, the responsibility to speak not only for themselves, but also for others, when not in the name of others. So the word dismantle, in Lorde's iconic essay, The Master's Tools will never dismantle the Master's house. Notice the Hegelian echo, master, slave. connotes destruction. Connotes destruction. There is no doubt. Dismantle connotes destruction, debunking. In fact, however, what Lorde does in this short but crucial essay is expose, remember the verb of critique, expose, and try to cut herself off from a rigid vision of the world based on relations of power. So, with the task of withdrawing, reassembling the world, so to speak. At the center of Lorde's concern, there's the idea of transformation. As in our predecessors, for example, this is just a note, for example, Langston Hughes, the writer and poet, modernist, Harlem Renaissance writer, poet Langston Hughes, transformation was at the center of his work as well. We should not forget that Lorde was at once a poet as well as a critic, a poet, a critic, and a theorist. Understanding and transforming are intertwined acts in our work, in our writing. The link is encapsulated one by one of our most popular essays, precisely. The Master's Tool, which sounds like an exhortation to undo dynamics, power dynamics, with new tools, and by removing oneself in a new environment, withdrawing, setting oneself apart, not reforming the old environment, but withdrawing in a new environment. Now, clearly, Lorde means first and foremost a mental environment. With the Master's tools, the Master's house, a new mental environment. The word difference in the essay proper, the word difference captures this new environment. In fact, I like to move soon to a quote, but let me prepare the quote. The word difference, which is also crucial in the essay, is that raw and powerful connection from which our personal power is forged. And Lorde values the notion of difference. She turns the term into a concept. She's interested in turning in what does she want to achieve in that essay, projecting a critical thought that would turn polarities into interdependence. We're back to Lonzi. Lonzi's plan was that as well. She envisioned that theoretical support, that theoretical environment. So turning polarities into interdependence. Let's look at a passage from the Master's Tool where we hear this. Difference must not be merely tolerated. Lorde is redefining difference. Difference must not be merely tolerated, but seen as a fund of necessary polarities between which our creativity can spark like a dialectic. She's not saying we must annul polarities, but she is envisioning a kind of dialectical space between the polarities. Only then does necessity for interdependency become unthreatening. Only within that interdependency of different strengths, acknowledged and equal, can the power to seek new ways of being in the world generate, as well as the courage and sustenance to act where there are no charters, no ready-made compass. So the unthought, the interest in letting emerge the substratum. Remember, Sontag talked about substratum of thought, Lonzi the unthought, and here we have Lorde to act where there are no charters. Now, oppositions are not going to go away. So it's not a wholly utopian essay. It's a constructive essay. Constructs taking its cue from conflicting differences. Oppositions are not going to go away, but they can be reshaped. And what you see here, if you use your visual imagination, you see a landscape of conflicting differences, but that can coexist, can be with which something can be constructed. So oppositions are not going to go away, but they can be reshaped form. In Lorde's aesthetic political vision, deconstruction and destruction, dismantle, seem to border on each other. It seems to be a thin, divide. One is always already ready to slip into the other. The ambiguity of dismantling, a word that is made to mean both destroy and renew in the essay. The ambiguity of dismantling foregrounds what we could call the plastic force of Lorde's argument, the plastic force of Lorde's feminist theory. For example, in The Master's Tools Will Never Dismantle the Master's House, she abandons a hierarchical vision of the world and moves toward a world made of differences. You see it here, all valuable, all equal, and interconnected. But this is a way in this passage you can glean this plastic force, its plastic intent, and you can hear it here as well. Within the interdependence of mutual, non-dominant, she's inventing a new vocabulary as well. If you think about the time when this seminal essay was composed, was written, within the interdependence of mutual, non-dominant differences lies that security which enables us security. Remember, Lonzi, the problem is not the master slave, the problem is to disempower the authority that the male is imposed to have. So, different. Security, safe, mental environment, inclusive, which enables us to descend, and here is the surprise. Within the interdependence of mutual non-dominant differences lies that security which enables us to descend into the chaos of knowledge and return with true visions of our futures. Thinking, knowing, there is this trajectory. She's imagining a trajectory of critique that rests precisely on this descent into the chaos of knowledge. Now, first of all, the vision of an interconnected world implies questions. So we are faced with questions here. To whom does knowledge feel like chaos in the first place? To whom does knowledge feel like chaos? Because we do not normally associate knowledge with chaos. Unless you have read Eve Sedgwick and you have learned about the seeker, knower, teller, who remakes the text with the purpose of healing the self. It means that this seeker knower dives into the text, and that diving is like diving into chaos. She's not interested in putting the text in a traditional other text, explicating it, but in using the text to fend off a hostile environment. But so to whom does knowledge feel like chaos? To whom does knowledge feel like a descent that must be undertaken, diving into the wreck, must be undertaken, the knife, deliberate, the knife, the camera. Oppositions are not going to go away, but they can be reshaped, I said. In Lorde's aesthetic political vision, deconstruction borders on destruction. Now, in order to end the descent into chaos holds new forms, deconstructing power, descending into chaos, to deconstruct power, but to hatch new forms, holds new visions. So how can we understand this bordering of destruction on deconstruction? I'm going to this is the question I asked, and I will I'll keep it in the PowerPoint that you will receive. I want to enlist the help of Catherine Malabou. She studied with Jacques Derrida, one of the pupils of Derrida, and she is now a scholar in her own right. And both I would say someone who continues deconstruction but takes it in very different directions than Derrida. So I want to stay and draw on stay with and draw on Catherine Malabou's definition of deconstruction in a booklet. It's a very short book called "Plasticity at the Dusk of Writing." And Malabou is also a scholar of Hegel, not very deconstructionist. And so here she joins the concept of dialectics, destruction, deconstruction. Malabou explains that deconstruction names an inner divide in philosophical discourse. So she acknowledges that deconstruction is a philosophical affair, first of all. Yes, we literary scholars may be interested in it, but we must, in order to understand its efficacy for us, we must remember that it springs forth from an inside philosophical argument. The self-deconstructive tendency at work in philosophy, a spacing and a temporization that destines presence to differ irreducibly from itself, the play of non-coincidence with itself. That is, deconstruction, it's an argument that philosophy has within itself because it is not capable, philosophy as a discourse, to account for difference, basically, if I have to simplify this. That is, it is unable to account for what does not coincide with presence, with what is recognized in philosophical abstraction. Display of non-coincidence of presence, what escapes, the display of what escapes a philosophical discourse, the philosophical discourse on presence, on something that is made to correspond to a form of writing, the movement of a trace. So you remember that Derrida instituted the notion of trace vis-a-vis the notion of sign. No longer the notion of sign, the notion of trace, because speaking about trace, speaking about the play of the signifier, was a possibility to account what escapes presence, what is not caught in the discourse on presence, and so the other of philosophy. So this is still within philosophy. Now, why are we interested in this? Even though deconstruction is a problem that philosophy has with itself, it has impacted on literary studies. You will Gayatri Spivak, the translator of grammatology, helps us understand that impact and that transfer, why deconstruction had such a powerful impact in literary studies, why was a transference. And she helps us understand it in her introduction to the thinker who is responsible for circulating the term, Jacques Derrida, although he never liked the term too much, as the translator of grammatology, Spivak, who also wrote this long explicative introduction to of grammatology. Quoting Derrida, Spivak explains that a deconstructive view of meaning, quote, substitutes, is the second quote in on the slide substitutes an incessant deciphering for the disclosure of truth as a presentation of the thing itself, an incessant deciphering. Truth is always, delayed, so to speak. Thus, in a deconstructive view of meaning, meaning is set afloat, unanchored from its fixity, etc., etc. So the term deconstruction implies a decentering of meaning. It projects a dislocating force. This is a brief recap of deconstruction. You may forgive me if I'm simplifying things, but I do it for the sake of moving forward with Lorde. Something similar, in fact, happens in Lorde when she decenters the notion of difference. She decenters the notion of difference. She dislocates the accepted meaning of difference and moves from difference as merely tolerated to, quote, the interdependence of mutual non-dominant differences. It's as if she were talking about traces, but with a very different vocabulary, rooted, of course, strongly in the social. This dislocation projects a different landscape, a different constellation that is conducive and even protects a descent into the chaos, to re-emerge with new knowledge. Lorde has her own uh, way. She understands deconstruction, the uses of deconstruction in her own way, and I suggest that in her writing, the deconstruction is practiced, and that practice is, comes to the fore. The question of deconstruction when we face this descent into chaos, whether the descent is clearly articulated in Lorde, as in the quote we read, or whether it is implicit, the descent into chaos, this urge to remake a whole, W-H-O-L-E, a whole, but not in its original way, to reconstitute an ensemble because it does not take you into account. So the descent into chaos emphasizes a withdrawal in an outside, which recalls Carl Alonso's quoting of the unthought, by the way. The descent has its plastic possibilities because you remember, yes, it's a descent into formlessness, but prompted by a need to find new forms. That's it. Its plastic potentialities, maybe instead of possibilities, if you like, its plastic potential, as the aim is to exit the master's house of dominant oppositional structures and re-emerge, quote, to make common cause with those others identified as outside the structures in order to define and seek plastic possibility, define and seek a world in which we can all flourish. We can all flourish. Notice the theoretical depth of Lorde and the simplicity of her surface lexicon. With Lorde, we are invited to ask. This is just a snapshot from a key moment from the Master's Tools. With Lorde, we are invited to ask, to find answers, to amplify our understanding. She emphasizes the plastic possibilities of writing. She writes to expand freedom and ambition, quote, a world of possibility, a world of possibility for us all. The snapshot you're seeing of the text is the snapshot where she affirms imagining a world, seeking a world in which we can all flourish. It is a world of possibilities for us all. The act of writing is at once personal, political, ethical, all the more reason to pay attention to the possibilities of form, how different forms can channel an ampler vision of the world. Forms of discourse can channel an ampler, there are certain forms of discourse that might channel an ampler vision of the world. Just recapping what I said. I care to move to the third section of the lecture, which deals with a key term in Lorde's writing, transformation. Notice that the word form is there, transformation. Okay. Lorde was also a poet, we said, and transformation is a theme in our early poetry, apart from being in the title of one of her most popular essays, The Transformation of Silence into Speech and Act. Transformation is a key motif, a theme in her early poetry. An example is coal. Coal. I would like to, I'm going to read it, but what I essentially aim to do is share a close reading of Cole with you to track the motif of transformation. I is the total black being spoken from the earth's inside. There are many kinds of open. How a diamond comes into a knot of flame, how a sound comes into a word colored by who pays for what, for speaking. Some words are open like a diamond on glass windows, singing out within the crash of passing sun. Then there are words like stapled wagers in a perforated book, buy and sign and tear apart, and come whatever wills at all chances, the stub remains, an ill-pulled tooth with a ragged edge. Some words live in my throat, breathing like adders. Others know sun, seeking like gypsies over my tongue to explode through my lips like young sparrows bursting from shell. Some words bedevil me. Love is a word, another kind of open. As a diamond comes into a knot of flame, I am black because I come from the earth's inside. Take my word for jewel in your open light. As a poet, Lorde turns to the ordinary and thus picks up from modernism in that. She takes the legacy, she builds on that legacy. Not only the modernist valuing of ordinariness, but also formally it's turned to free verse, because this is a poem in free verse. The title, coal, is a word for a solid combustible substance that was once used to burn and warm environments, coal. Today, it is used for the production of electrical energy and in the chemical industry. So it is something connected to daily life. Lorde takes it and turns it into a metaphor for blackness in this poem. The title, in its metaphorical meaning, sets the stage to explore the condition of blackness and anticipates the theme of transformation. Coal, in fact, suggests something fundamental and raw, associated with the earth and associated also with transformation. In fact, the backbone, the fact, the donné, the skeleton of the poem is the knowledge on the reader's part, and if we did not know, it's enough to open an encyclopedia, It's the knowledge of a common ground, of an interdependence between two completely different agents, coal on the one hand and diamonds on the other. Coal and diamonds share the same element, carbon. So interdependence by having something in common. Diamonds, in fact, are made from a form of carbon that has been subjected to extreme pressure and heat under the Earth's mantle at a temperature over, I think, 1000 degrees Celsius. So under this region of the Earth's mantle, diamonds are continually forming and growing. So carbon into gem. Lorde taps chemical imagery in this poem to pursue the I's transformation. The pronoun I, first person pronoun I's transformation. The transformation entails a distance. So taking a distance from the I that in which she already recognizes herself, from the self that she thinks she has, that the poet, speaker thinks she has. And that's why the I is set apart on the first line. The first line of this poem is made of one word, the pronoun I, which I have, marked in red ink. It stands out as if it were, as if I, the pronoun I, were an abstract position that then, the speaker observes coldly to examine it. An abstract position that the speaker in flesh and blood behind the poem must step into, make her own. It's not already her I. So we are made to witness the process of becoming self, stepping into a self. Remember, stepping into language. This fact is bespoken, as I was saying, by the solitary position of the first person pronoun, the first line, I, and we have to, it's an enjambed line, so we are made to pause by the line break, and it's the surprising pause because our instinct would tell us to read the sentence, I is the total black, and then I is the third person verb. So I first person. So we are made to pause and notice that abstracting move. We are made to notice, therefore, a split between person and action. The action of speaking here, giving us the poem, the first person, and then the passive position is first person, being spoken, the I being spoken by language, by someone else, split. So the adjunct first line with its solitary I, standing as if to be observed, scrutinized, studied, marks the separation between the split between subject and predicate, the split between person and action, I and agency. In fact, we learned that the first person pronoun is being spoken passive. The poem must accomplish, therefore, the transformation from this passive position, being spoken, to the gem condition, the blooming agency that we get by the time we finish the poem, transformed into a gem. Take my word, a self-referring moment. The text refers to itself, the achieved text, the completed text. Take my word for jewel in your open light. We notice throughout the poem, we notice the mutual incorporation of body and nature, earth. I come from the earth inside, the earth's inside. I, okay, being spoken from the earth's inside, then I come from the earth's inside. I'm black in the last stanza. I'm black because I come. But now the fact of coming from the earth's inside is embraced actively. I come from the earth's inside, the mutual incorporation of body and nature. Moreover, we are informed that the transformation from coal to diamond, from coal to gem, is achieved through love. Last stanza. Love is a word, another kind of open. Notice the lack of punctuation. Open. How many times has this metaphor occurred in our lectures? Many times. Seeking an opening. Um, achieved through love. Love. And so the metaphor pairs emotions, chemical processes, and the potential of writing words. The poem does not follow a consistent, rigid metrical pattern, as we remarked earlier on. This is common in free verse poetry, but there are still some rhythmic elements present, elements that help the whole cohere. For example, lines vary greatly in length, from very, very short I to quite long, the line ending with a part and then the dash, contributing to the poem's flowing. It keeps us reading. It keeps the form of the poem whole. It says there is a form after all to this. This transformation is messy. It's a descent into chaos, but there is a form still. Lorde uses line breaks. I'm of course enamored with the way she uses line breaks to help our breath. Pause and follow her. This is again HD. Remember HD, the reflective scenario. This is a scenario, the scenario of the critic thinking, the poet critic. There are poetic texts that you can call metapoetic. There are texts that make you reflect, in which, in fact, the persona, the speaker, is the double of the poet, reflecting under guise on her own practice. Lorde uses line breaks, punctuation, and also spacing, to control pacing, so that the whole thing does not fall apart. It's not a chaos. Pacing and pauses, adding emphasis or allowing the reader to linger on specific words or on specific images. For instance, the stub remains an ill-pulled tooth with a ragged edge. You cannot help but pause on this raw image. This reinforces the jagged, painful nature of the image. While the frequent enjambments, of course, they occur very frequently. Some words are open, like a diamond of glass windows, singing out. The frequent enjambments, where one line flows into the next without a pause or break, create a sense of continuity, flow, okay, enhancing a continuous flow that, however, performs the capacity to offer a form, to offer something that sticks together, that is glued together, that is form and not formlessness. Because the transformation from, how do you transform from an I that is being spoken that does not exist, remember Arendt, to an I that stands. It's a messy process, very messy and perhaps violent, cruel. It involves a lot. Frequent enjambments, then, where one line flows into the next without a pause or break, create a sense of continuity, enhancing the idea of an I that is unconfined and continuously evolving. It's not an I spoken, fixed, pinned, like a butterfly to the window pane, as Virginia Woolf would say, but it is an I in unconfined space, evolving. Transformation in this poem means bridging two widely different domains. We see, so the enjambments, just as a reminder, is a continuity, they emphasize continuity, and of course, they are part of the technique of Lorde, as Lorde tries to present an I that exits in an unconfined space, where it can evolve. And now, the next point. Transformation in this poem means bridging two widely different domains. So coal and diamonds are widely and wildly different elements. And in fact, one feature of the poem is this splicing together, this joining of this plastic work of joining wild differences so that they can cohere into a form, an unthreatening form, non-chaotic form. And one of the rhetorical figures that Lorde uses, it's a curiosity I'd like to share with you just in case you are interested. Apokoino, there is the bridging terms used as bridges to join two disparate realms. For example, words, live in my throat. Words are just signs, called signs, but they live in my throat. Breathing like adders. Breathing means, to give birth. It's very positive. Adders is threatening, negative, dangerous. So the bridging, making differences interdependent. For example, in the line, how a diamond comes into a knot of flame. How a diamond comes, the last stanza, into a knot of flame. There is ambiguity in the verb comes. Okay, comes. It is used to describe both how the diamond emerges and how it undergoes a transformation, a violent transformations through flames, going to trial, test by flames, from coal to diamond. So thus comes joins two disparate ideas together, diamond and flame, suggesting that the diamond emerges from a fiery process, the same dangerous, fiery, potentially chaotic process that the woman of color must undergo in order to shed a ready-made identity and come forward, stand kinesthetically as an I. Another example is some words live in my throat. We commented that poetry. Therefore, if I had to, I'm moving toward the conclusion. Poetry, therefore, is not a luxury. I'm quoting Lorde. You know that. Poetry is not a luxury. We try to illustrate that in our close reading of Cole. What is it? Poetry is not a luxury, but a making and a remaking of the world. Yes, it's that ambitious. So what emerges is the faith in language and writing. Some of you were asking yesterday and the day and on Monday about the power of language. Is language important? Yes, Lorde says yes. Faith in language and writing, faith that it has its role in a remaking and in a making and remaking of the world. So language and writing is an enormous importance, decisive. As usual, you have the works cited slide. I've added the essay by Catherine Malabou. Malabou is the author of many other essays, among which an essay on innovative essay on Hegel, and some of, it's impossible, Lorde wrote extensively, it's impossible to focus on her entire production, but I singled out perhaps the most well-known essays. And as for the poem Cole, I don't think Cole is that well-known, but it is certainly anthologized in the Northern Anthology of American Literature, so it's available for all students of American literature. And thank you very much for your attention. I cede the floor to Atolanto and Rashmi for instructions as to how to
Thank you.
proceed.
Yeah, ma'am. Thank you very much for your lecture. The lectures are thought provoking as usual. Both the lectures on Andrew Lord and Carlonzi both are thought provoking. Specifically, I am attracted with the way you read a poetry. That's something like every one of us should learn from you. The way to read a piece. So that's very attractive, and I know the participants will have many questions and comments in their mind. So we are meeting again today for the tutorial session. So
Yeah,
I request you to take up the questions and comments at that point.